Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is going to be often overlooked XProtect features part 2. We did this last year. It got good results. People seem to like it. So hopefully the sequel will be as good as the original. So my name is Jason Wallace. I've been about a little over 3 years at Milestone, about 14 years in the industry.
And my name is Tarter. I've been with Milestone a little over 9 years, about 15 years in the industry. And before we get started, I just want to let you know we're going to try our hardest not to say AI or deep learning or machine learning or cloud, except for just now when I said AI and deep learning, machine learning, cloud. After that, we're done.
Yeah, we're going to focus on the software here. All right, so this is going to be fast and furious. All right, we got a lot of stuff we're going to cover. We'll have a little Q&A thing at the end if we want to ask questions or fill in any gaps. I'm going to start with the smart client features, go into the management client, and then we have a couple of bonus things that should be kind of fun to talk about. So just to go ahead and get right into it, this we did touch on last year. It's called Video Diagnostic Overlay. And if we can switch to the demo screen. This we access by going into Settings and go over here to Advanced. And we're going to turn it up to 11. Actually, level 3. All right, so this is called Video Diagnostic Overlay. So we did, again, touch on this last year. And I'm going to see if I can do the magnification thing. And if we can get that to play nice. There it goes. Took a second, but it came up. OK, so again, we did touch on this last year, but we've expanded it. Actually, I think it's evolved twice since MIPS last year. So this has a lot of pretty standard stuff that's going to be familiar. We've got frames per second. Currently, this is going to show you what the system's actually rendering with regard to frames per second. So this is a good diagnostic tool because you may have a situation where you've got your camera set, you know the camera's set to 15 frames per second, and it's showing up 10. Or if you bring the camera full screen, and it's still showing up 10. That's a good way to tell there's a bottleneck somewhere. Maybe it's a bottleneck in your network, but if you know your network's solid and you're seeing 15 here, and then you bring it up to a multi-camera layout and it drops down to 10, that would be an indication that something's wrong with your workstation, because your workstation is having trouble keeping up with that. So it's a good way to kind of look for clues and to find things in there. We've got video codec, that's pretty self-explanatory. We've got video resolution, multicast. So here's another area here, this hardware acceleration. So this is a new thing that was added. Right now, this particular camera is running on my Intel GPU. So this is an i7 CPU in the laptop. It has a GPU built into it. That's Intel QuickSync you may have heard us talk about. But over here, this one's saying it's running on NVIDIA. I've also got an NVIDIA chipset in the laptop. And the software is smart enough to load balance between the two of those. And it will tell you in the video diagnostic overlay which GPU is being utilized for that acceleration. And to take it a step further, down here, now this is a laptop chipset, so the code is kind of weird, but normally it'll even tell you what PCI slot that the card is in. So if you've got multiple GPUs loaded in your PCI slots, it'll even tell you which ones are being leveraged to show the video. So this is also very useful if you've got a large layout. So maybe you load more cameras on here. You've got 15, 20, 50 cameras. And you can go through there and you can see how many are using NVIDIA versus the Intel chipset. And if you've finally dropped down to where it says no, and you've dropped down into no acceleration, and you're using the CPU for that. And that tells you that you've exceeded the capacity of your GPUs.
Yep. The other benefit to this, too, is if you see just some cameras that maybe aren't showing all the frames that you know you're supposed to be getting, you can look for a correlation. Maybe all those are being decoded by the same video card, which may indicate a problem on the video card. Maybe the drivers need to be updated or something like that. So there's a lot of information in here. There's also all those other items down there that we have a KB article on our website that explains what all of those are for the geeks out here who are really interested in that.
Yep. We've also got bitrate, and there's another thing here that this is a little bit of foreshadowing for stuff we'll talk about a little bit later. We've also got GOP length. So this is with H.264 or group of pictures length. This is telling us that every 10 frames we're getting a keyframe coming in. And we're running at 10 frames per second, so that's roughly 1 per second for keyframe rate. This is, of course, variable within your camera. You can usually set this and change that keyframe rate that it comes in, but this is how it's set now, and 1 frame per second is pretty industry average. So we're going to duck out of that, and what I'm going to do is go in here to turn back off this, and we're going to also advance to our next slide. And that is going to be, if I remember correctly, keyboard. All right, so one of the first things that we'll do when we set up a new Milestone system is set up keyboard shortcuts. This is a really useful feature. Almost any function in the Milestone software, in the Smart Client software, can be mapped to a keyboard quick key. So if you want to go into live mode or playback mode, I usually do Control P or Control L for those. One of the first things that we'll set up is called Reload Server Configuration. So if you scroll down a little bit here on the right side on this default screen, you'll see this first one come up. It's called Reload Server Configuration, and then you go over here to this top left box, and you do the combination you want. So I've already got Control R set up, so I'll do Control Shift R and set that one. You click Assign. What this does, that function there is the equivalent of logging out and logging back in. So if you're in the management client software and you're making changes to cameras or users or layouts or other functions that might require you to log out and log back in, it's a huge time saver to be able to go over here and just say Control R. It thinks for a second, and that's the equivalent of logging in and logging back out. So it can save you some time and hassle with doing that.
There are a couple components it won't retrieve, though. The main one is if you're doing the XProtect access integration, doing that shortcut won't retrieve that. So if you're making changes there, the users will have to log out and log back in to get those changes. But anything like you said, camera settings, or not camera settings, user permissions, different things like that will get pulled in that configuration file.
Yeah, it can be a huge time saver. And a couple of the ones we're going to talk about today are all about saving time and working more efficiently in the software. So another one we want to talk about, and again, this one we did touch on last year, so bear with me if you went through this one last year, but it's really worth repeating. It's just an incredible time saver, incredibly useful. So one of the common complaints we hear with competing video VMS products is the ability to export video. That's a pain point. How do you get video out of the system? I mean, how often do you see clips on YouTube where it's somebody holding their camera up recording a screen because nobody knows how to actually export video out of their VMS? So this is a feature here that if you just, so first you got to tell the system what video you're interested in with the software. So if you're really OCD and you jot down your dates and times, you can actually give it an actual start and stop time. Nobody ever uses this because it's a hassle. Everyone uses this because it's super easy. All you do is you hit the time selection tool, and you've got these little handlebars over here off to the side. So we're going to pay attention to the top left camera on here, and all we do is we hit our stop point, and we're going to look for a bad guy. So what we're going to do is I'm going to run the video here. We're going to find somebody coming in the door, and this is going to be our international jewel thief or a laptop thief, some kind of bad guy that we're going to follow. And what I'm going to do is back it up and just drag this timeline. You'll see the video updates as I drag, so it's real time, so you can see exactly where you want to start and stop. Put it to the part where we care about, where the bad guy's coming into frame. Same thing with the end point, only when they leave the frame. Okay? So normally if you export video, you just go over here and you click export, and you can export this clip out if you want to. But what happens if you're in a situation where maybe you've got, pick a number, 50 cameras across a facility, you've got a suspect that comes on the property and they go across 40 out of the 50 cameras for over a period of an hour. Do you really want to export 40 cameras times an hour's worth of video just to get the various 5-second clips where the guy might have been on one particular camera? That's a huge amount of data to export and keep up with. And plus, nobody knows who the bad guy is. If it's after the fact, how do you figure out who the target is because you've got an hour of footage in front of you? So what we do here is we do this thing called storyboarding. So we click on this, and we go over here, and instead of saying export, we're going to do add to export list. And all we've told the system is that that's a segment of video that we're interested in. That's preserve that clip, that date and time, start and stop point, that's of interest. And we're going to move ahead a little bit more here. We're going to find on one of the other cameras a new bad guy. So we're going to look for somebody coming through. Look at that, she changed clothes. She's really good. She's top notch, but we're better. All right, so this person coming here over here on the bottom right, we're going to do the same thing we just did. And we're going to drag the camera over here, get our point of, oh, did I lose it? Nope, there it is. So there's a start point, and we do the same thing, drag the end point to where they're out of frame. Over here, we click this to say this is the camera that we're interested in, same thing, add to export list. And I'll do one more on here just for kicks. And we'll do it real quick here. And this one will be on the top right. So we're just going to find somebody, this person in the coat. Again, this would be the same person moving from camera to camera through a facility. Okay, that's good enough. We'll click that. And add to export list. All right, from that point, and again, you'd rinse and repeat. You do this over and over again as your bad guy moves from camera to camera. And then when you've accomplished that, you go over here and you say export, and you'll get a new pop-up window on here. And this is where you actually can fine-tune this if you want to. And I think we had a bonus feature that was pointed out. If you select multiples of these, no, I should have tested it beforehand. I'm told that there's a way that if you select multiples of these, you'll actually get like a quad view over here on the right, but I've never actually tried it. So over here, we've got our clip, so you could actually fine tune it. So you can bring up the clip. If you want to adjust the handlebars, adjust the timing, you can. You can even add additional clips if you want to. Over here, you can control where the video actually exports to. In this case, it's going to go somewhere on my hard drive. I usually save it to a desktop. But in Smart Client Profiles, you can actually lock this down, and you can have it saved specifically to a network drive that's write only. So you can keep custody of the video, and it doesn't get out of hand. You can have it actually have the ability to export video, but go to a specific location that nobody else has access to. That's easily done in Smart Client Profiles. Down here, you choose your format. So this is our native XProtect format. The export process is really quick. You want to include the player software. This is the same software we're working with in the background, so you have the ability to zoom in, zoom out, change the video. It's real clear who your bad guy is. You can have the ability, because it is the same software, to export subclips, so you can export from the export. Sometimes you want to do that. Maybe you've got legal discovery issues where the police want to give subclips out to people, or you maybe want to lock it down. And then we can also password protect and encrypt it up to 256-bit AES. So this is really useful if you've got an educational environment or HIPAA requirements for hospitals, something where there's something sensitive on the video and you want to lock it down. So even if the video file gets shared, it's useless unless they have the password. And then lastly, we have digital signature that proves the video hasn't been tampered with. And if you've got expert and corporate, it'll take it a step further and actually prove the video hasn't been tampered with while it was on the server, in addition to after the point it was exported. And then lastly, we've got comments on here. So if you want to type in some comments, look for the person in the red shirt or whatever, it's relevant for that. So in the interest of time, I'm going to cancel out of that. I've already got an export that I want to show real quick.
Yep. And while he's loading that up, one other bonus feature as well is on the timeline, whether it's in the playback tab, whether it's in the export window, independent playback, anywhere there's a timeline, you can hold down Control and use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out on the timeline instead of using the little scroll bar that's down there on the playback tab. So it's a quick way of doing that without having to keep going down there and slide that back and forth.
So yep, so down here, if I click on this, hold down Control, you can zoom in. So this also works in independent playback mode. So if you take the thing in independent playback and you don't have that little control over here to change your zoom level, this is another same thing. It'll work over here where you can zoom in and zoom out, which is a neat little trick. So this is my front yard. My neighbor has bad luck with people driving down our street. He's lost a trash can, and in this case, he lost his car. So I'm sitting in my home office, I hear this crash and look out the window and see all this unfolding in front of me. I'm able to take this and really quickly export this video and then put it on a thumb drive and go across the street and say, here you go. I've got it on, whoops, I zoomed in. I've got it from 3 different angles for you. Let him use his insurance. So my neighbors think I'm crazy otherwise with all the cameras up. I work in the industry, it's okay. Okay, so that's video export. And the next thing we want to talk about is camera device grouping. So this is also a huge time saver. We're going to transition over to the management client software now. So you can have a camera in more than one group. You make these folders, and you can put cameras into multiple folders to organize them. There's 2 main reasons you want to do this. One is administrative, and one is for the Smart Client users to be able to access and figure out what cameras belong in what groups. So maybe from the Smart Client side, you want to put cameras into groups that say, whatever works for your organization, 10th floor, north wing, parking lot cameras, whatever makes sense for your organization, how you want to organize it. So people in the Smart Client software can come over here and they'll see these groups over here on the left side. So we've got simulated and we've got X administrative. So they'll see those groups, they would see a group called 10th floor. They would see a group called north or parking lot. And it's real easy for them to then find those cameras and then drag those over into the layouts to make their layouts. But there's also another use case that makes a lot of sense and is a huge time saver is administrative groups. So one of the first thing I'll do is I'll go in here and I'll make a folder and literally name it X space administrative. And it's because this loads alphabetically, the X goes to the bottom of the list. And inside here, then you can create additional groupings that are only pertaining to the administrative side of things, and it doesn't clutter up the Smart Client interface. So when you do it that way, you can make groups of cameras for like models to make bulk changes if you want to. Because you can click on a folder and apply, under the settings here, you can apply changes in mass to cameras. And these are fake cameras here. They're from our stable FPS. I need to do this under reel to show that. Okay, so under settings, if I applied a setting here on this folder, it would impact all the cameras that are in that folder. Or I could drill down and go to a specific camera if I want to. So this is also incredibly useful for the rules engine. So sometimes, and this is foreshadowing here, so sometimes in my home system at one point, I wanted it to record all night long. So I had some IR cameras that had a limited IR range, and it would miss stuff at the very extreme end of the IR range. So I said, okay, fine. At night, I want you to record all night, the whole time, and then in daytime, I want you to switch back and record on motion-based recording. So if you're in that scenario, you can go and say, okay, I've got 20 cameras, I'm going to make 20 rules and go through that, or you can do it once. Put all the cameras in a folder, apply the rule to that specific folder, and then it impacts all the cameras that are inside there. So again, huge time saver. And that was the foreshadowing. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was day length time profiles. So I mentioned I had my system record all night long and then switch to motion detection during the day. So in Milestone, we have a thing called time profiles. This is how we define time in Milestone. So the typical, stereotypical use for this is you make up a time profile and you'd say, okay, I'm going to put in my business hours. So if I get motion detection after hours, I want to know about it, send me an alert. During business hours when the shop's open, I don't want to be bugged. Don't send me the alerts. Or maybe they'll put in their holidays, things like that. But a little known feature on here that people don't realize we have is called day length time profiles. And the secret trick here is you can put in your GPS coordinates and it'll figure out, based on your geographical location, when it's actually day and night. And that, of course, changes over the course of the year. So over here, the easy way to do this is just fire up Maps, Google Maps. If you zoom in a little bit and move the map, you'll see over here on the top you get coordinates. And all you do is you just snag these up here. And you can also get it from your mobile phone, but then you have to type it in. This is a lot easier just to copy it and go over here and just paste it in. And then right away it calculated, based on this location, when's day and night. So now you can even go over here and sandbag it. And you can say, okay, I actually want this to switch over 20 minutes after sunset. So the sun's down and the light's gone dark and it's actually nighttime. Because where I live at 9 p.m. it may be broad daylight, it may be pitch black outside, it just depends on the time of the year. So this is a way to actually have the system genuinely change its behavior when it's actually day or actually night. And what do we got next? So the next thing we have, Jared's going to talk to us about how to do speed up on motion.
Thank you, Jason. All right, so like Jason said, we're going to talk about speeding up on motion. We're going to talk about two ways to do it. One is a way we would not recommend doing it, and the other one is the way we would recommend doing it. So we'll talk about the one we don't recommend first. And to show this, we're going to jump over into rules. I'm going to turn on my magnifier just to hopefully help a little bit here. And we're going to look at this speed up. Whoops. It's one that I have disabled here. And hopefully that's a little bit more readable for some of you out there. But what this is saying is that when motion starts, set the live frame rate on that device to whatever we tell it to. When motion stops, set the live frame rate back to what it was. The reason we tend not to recommend this way is what this is actually doing is sending a command out to the camera, telling the camera, hey, change your frame rate. If you've ever tried this with various camera manufacturers, some of them do this very well. There might be a half a second delay before it changes it, and they'll keep streaming. Some might stop streaming. Some might stop streaming for 3 to 5 seconds. I've seen cameras have to reboot to change that frame rate setting. That's the last thing you want to happen when you have some event telling it to change the frame rate to have a gap in your video.
Yeah, the moment your bad guy comes on the scene, it's the last time you want to send a command to the camera and have your video glitch.
So there is a use for this, though, going back to what Jason just talked about in the previous one. If, say, at night you want to change your frame rate, doing it this way could be an applicable way. If you're doing it after hours at your shop, the likelihood of something going on during that 3 to 5 seconds or whatever is far less, and maybe this would be a better way to use that. So the way we would recommend doing it is a couple different steps here. So we're going to start over on the camera. I'm going to go over to Entrance and down to our Record tab. And in here, there's this checkbox that says Record Keyframes Only. By default, this is unchecked. So we already have it checked because we had this set up. So you go ahead and check that, you save it. If that's all you do, you're not going to like what you just did because now you've told the system to only record keyframes. And if you're using our default motion rule, then now you're recording keyframes only on motion, and that's all you're doing. And by default, we record 1 keyframe a second. So now you're recording 1 frame per second on motion and nothing else. Not really a good application.
So flashback, that was the video overlay where we had the GOP. That is telling you your keyframe rate. So whatever that says is going to be your recording rate at that point.
So then what we got to do is we got to go in and set up some rules to tell it to operate how we want it to. So the first one is this item right here that says set recording frame rate to all frames for MPEG-4, H.264, H.265. And you set that to happen on motion, and then when motion stops, you tell it to go back to the keyframe setting. So now at this point, with that set, we're now recording all the frames on motion, and we're not doing anything after that because we haven't told it to record on non-motion yet. So we're recording all the frames on motion, so we're kind of back to where we started at this point. So we got to do one more step in here, which is just set up a continuous recording rule to tell it to always record that camera based on the time interval of always. That way it's always going to record at the 1 keyframe per second. Then when there's motion, it's going to keep all the frames. So this whole time we're not talking to the camera at all in settings. We're just choosing what frames we're going to keep. So continuously we're going to keep that one frame, we'll ditch everything else. When motion happens, we'll keep everything. When motion stops, we'll go back to just recording that keyframe per second. And so that gives you the 1 frame per second continuous, collecting all your frames on motion without the risk of interrupting the camera and losing that vital video.
Yeah, the camera is blissfully unaware this is happening. It's just Milestone saying we're going to ignore the in-between frames and pay attention only to keyframes, or we're going to pay attention to everything and record everything.
So from there, we're going to move over to context-sensitive help. I'm going to get rid of the magnifier here. So if you're not aware, both in the management client and the smart client, we have context-sensitive help files. What that means is that wherever you're at in the software, if you enter into our help files, it'll take you to that section in the help file, so you don't have to go and search and try to find where you're at. So as an example, in the management client, I'm just going to hit F1 here, and I'm on the rules. It's going to open up our help files, which launch into a browser, and it takes me right to the rules section of our help files. You can see over here, I have all the different sections within the rules. I can click around, do what I need to do. If a user, for example, is exporting video, they have the export window open, they hit F1, it takes them to the export section of the help file as well. It might give them a little refresher on what they need. We also have e-learning modules that can cover a lot of that as well. But it's just another way to quickly get to where you need to go if you just need kind of a quick refresher of what something does, or maybe, for example, with rules, you want to know what do all these default rules that exist in the rules engine actually do. In the help file, it goes step by step and explains what they're actually doing.
Yeah, and this is actually good, useful content. It's not fluff. It's pulled right from the administrative manual. It's actually useful. You'll learn what that feature is in detail.
Yep. All right, so from here we're going to go to user access logging. And parts of this were hit on in some of the earlier sessions in regard to the log server and the audit log. But the one I want to talk about is specifically with the audit log, and that there's 2 levels of the audit log. So by default in the system, we'll log kind of the basic user information. So we'll log that someone logged in, we'll log, I believe, that they exported video, and a handful of other things, but not a lot of detail in there. And what users don't realize is you can go in and actually request for it to log all that extra detail. And that's done under Tools and Options. I'll turn my magnifier back on here again real quick. And under Server Logs and Audit Log, there's a checkbox right here that says Enable User Access Logging. So by default, this is not checked. You go ahead and check this box. There's some options below it you can set. Hit F1, read the help file. It'll tell you what those options mean. And then from there, it'll start recording a lot more information. You saw some of it before, but if you weren't in the previous sessions, I'll go ahead and jump over here to the audit log. And you can see here, get rid of that. But there's a whole lot of information here talking about what Jason was doing before when he was searching for the video. So it's showing me all of my recording sequences that I've retrieved, the time frame for when they retrieved, the cameras they applied to, what user it was, the source type, all kinds of information. And if you were in the previous sessions, they were showing you how you can filter through all this information and everything like that. So if you need that kind of deeper level in regards to what your users are doing, it's just a simple checkbox, but it's definitely an overlooked feature that a lot of people aren't aware of. Next, we'll move to System Monitor. Who here uses System Monitor? All right, we got a couple hands. That's good. So who here has used the System Monitor thresholds to proactively get alerts and such? All right. So let's talk about System Monitor. In Expert and Corporate, you can access System Monitor from the management client or as a tab in the smart client. And what it is a way to just see what's going on in your system. So it'll show you CPU usage, memory usage, disk throughput, camera frame rates, how much storage each camera is using, all that kind of information. What you can also do, though, is come into the System Monitor thresholds and set different thresholds that you want to be alerted on. So for example, if we look here at the top, Some of you may not be able to see it in the back, but it's CPU usage, and I have two thresholds here, critical and warning. My critical is currently set at 80%, my warning is set at 60%. Maybe I want to get warning a little bit earlier. All I got to do is drag this bar down and go down to 50%. Now I'll get a threshold warning at 50% in the next step, which I'll show you. I can also go into areas such as cameras. I won't bother saving that here. And get thresholds based off of my live frame rate or my recording frame rate as a percentage of what the setting is for that camera. You can do kind of a global setting here, or you can go into advanced and drill down into your actual cameras and go on a camera by camera basis if you had the need to do that for various reasons.
And maybe you have a problem camera that acts up and you don't want to constantly get the alerts from it. You can drill down and adjust the values for that one specifically. I'm not sure if it'll apply to groups.
In what?
And can you apply the thresholds to camera groupings?
I'll tell you here in 5 seconds.
Segue.
No.
Nope.
Good question, though.
This is a global value on here for all the cameras.
So then once you've set those thresholds, all you've done is set the thresholds. You're still not getting any alerts. The nice thing, though, is those thresholds are available in both the alarms and in the rules. So if we jump back over to rules real quick and hit the Add Rule button and go over to Event, we'll throw the magnifier back up again real quick for those in the back, and expand System Monitor and, for example, Server. Try that again.
What we were doing is just defining what's good and bad and ugly. It's the thresholds. This is where you actually create the actions to actually perform an action.
So here you just select the event you want, and then all the actions that are available in the rules, you choose what you want, send me an email or something like that. Or again, in the Alarm Manager, you have it trigger an alarm, just like anything else in the Alarm Manager. So you have all those thresholds available to get a little more proactive notification on what's going on in the system instead of reactive. Who here has heard of failover camera shedding? That's what I expected because my coworker Mike Gonzalez made it up last week. Because we couldn't think of a better name for it.
Seemed like a good name.
Yeah, it hopefully will make sense here once we explain it. What failover camera shedding is, or how we define it at least, is being able to control how cameras fail over when you're doing a recording server failover. So in Expert and Corporate, we have built-in failover recording servers for those who are not aware. And I can select my recording server and go down here to the failover tab. I will turn this back on for those of you in the back again. And up here at the top is where I choose what servers I want it to fail over to or what group I want it to fail over to. That's kind of standard stuff with that. But what a lot of people miss is this big button right here that says Advanced Failover Settings. We'll go ahead and click that. And as you can see here, I have a list of not just my cameras, but my microphones, speakers, everything that is actually getting recorded in the system. And I can choose how I want that to fail over. So by default, they fail over with full support, meaning it's going to fail over, it's going to record, motion detection, whatever is set up will continue on the failover server. Maybe I don't need that. Maybe I have cameras that aren't as critical as others, so I could choose to disable those cameras if I don't need the recording for those, and that way my failover recording server doesn't have to be as powerful. Because as you know, with a failover recording server, most of the time it's just sitting there collecting dust, doing nothing at all. So if you don't need failover for all your cameras, you could get a smaller server, lower end, lower cost, and just fail over the 10%, 20% of your critical cameras in that scenario, and then go back to recording full when it's back online. Or if you have a scenario where you just have users where live video is super important, recording isn't as important, it's not a common scenario, but I've heard of it, then you could choose to just fail over the live video, and that way users still have the live viewing that they need, but then you don't need any storage on that failover recording server.
Another common scenario would be if you have a VMware environment in that facility. So maybe they want to spin up a Windows VM machine and not have it pull a lot of horsepower or resources from the host. So you could just fail over the critical cameras that are important to you, but then you don't have to have a whole dedicated server just for that purpose. We'll do some Q&A right at the end.
From there, we're going to move to Milestone Software Manager. And can we throw the PowerPoint in the middle as well? Who here has heard of Milestone Software Manager? All right, more than I expected. Who here has actually used Milestone Software Manager? All right, a little bit fewer hands. Most of them are SEs. You guys don't count over there.
If you work for Milestone, it doesn't count.
Yeah. So what Software Manager is it's really one of Milestone's best kept secrets, to be honest. And not because we're trying to keep it a secret, but just because nobody seems to know about it. It's a software package that's available on our website under our download section. It's been out for I don't know, 6, 7 years or so, and we still run across people all the time, majority of this room, who aren't aware that this tool exists. What it is a tool that allows you to push out updates for your system. Recording server updates, device pack updates, and even smart client updates. It gives you a lot of control. I'm going to let this kind of scroll through some screenshots here, but it gives you a lot of control on how you do it. So you can choose to bulk update all your recording servers at once if you want to. You can choose to upgrade them 3, 4, 5 at a time, which would be a good scenario if you have failover recording servers. If you only have 3 failover recording servers, then you might just want to upgrade 3 recording servers at a time. You can choose to upgrade them in parallel, in sequence. You can even choose to push the installer out and then at a later date come back and actually run the installer. A good example of that is we have some customers that have some remote recording servers that are on very low bandwidth connections. So they'll push the installer out one night, and then they'll come back the next night once it's all finished, and then they'll go through and upgrade all their recording servers at that point in time. So there's a lot of flexibility here, and to give you a real-life example, I believe it was 2 years ago, Mike Sherwood and myself were out at a large school district that is one of our customers, and they had 55 recording servers. We were there over the summer, so no school in session, so we thought, why don't we just see what happens if we try to upgrade all 55 recording servers in one shot? For any of you who've done this on a large system without Software Manager, you know that can take a lot of time, even if you're multitasking or a lot of people doing it in conjunction and such. So we decided to throw it all out in one shot, just push it out there, install it, and we'll see what happens. The end result was we upgraded 55 recording servers in under 15 minutes, which to me was pretty impressive. That was the first time I'd actually used it in a system of that size, and that spoke volumes to me knowing how long it would have taken if we would have been out there for multiple days going through and upgrading the system. The nice thing, too, as you can see on this screenshot, is it gives you a progress of what's going on. So if a recording server fails to upgrade for whatever reason, you'll have an indication on this last screen here. And also, we don't have a screenshot of it, but when you go next after it's all finished, it'll give you even more detail what might have happened, why it failed. But you'll know exactly which ones succeeded, which ones failed, and you go from there. So again, recording server, device packs, and even smart clients if you want to do that instead of using like SCCM or something like that, depending on your application. But it's a great tool. Again, it's free, available right there on the download section on our website.
Huge time saver.
Next, we'll talk about the What's Changed tool. So this isn't directly related to our software, but we figured this was worth talking about, especially for the resellers in the room, but even some of the end users. And what this is a tool that we launched, I believe, the middle of last year. It's available on our website under Support and Version Comparison Tool. And it takes you to a page like this. What this tool is going to ask you to do is choose the platform and the version of software that you or your customer are currently running. Oh, sorry. Can you flip back? Thank you. All right, so I'll show you that part again real quick. Under Support and Version Comparison Tool, and you get a page like this. So I'm going to come in here, and my customer, for example, is currently using Expert. It's going to refresh here, and they're currently running on, we will say, 2016 original version. So what this does now is it gives me a list of every single feature that's been added to Expert since the 2016 release. It breaks it down by category. If I want to drill into these categories, say interoperability, I go ahead and expand that. Then it lists each feature that was added in the interoperability section. And if I'm looking at this and wondering what on earth is OnVIF Bridge playback support, then I can just expand that, and there's a nice brief description of what OnVIF Bridge playback support is.
And this is tailored specifically for whatever version the customers are running.
Yes.
You're not having to sort through a bunch of tables and figure out what features are new and what features aren't. It's specific.
Yep, you're not going to have to go through and hunt through all the release notes and stuff like that. It's all there in one page. And if you know you're going to be doing this ahead of time, once you've loaded all that, you can download this as a nice PDF file, send it to the customer, print it out, however you want to do it. It's a great sales tool, especially if you're talking to the customers about upgrading their care subscription or what the reason behind care is and what they're getting. It just provides a lot of information there, very easily laid out for you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jason here, and he's going to talk about something a little off the beaten path.
Yep. So this isn't even Milestone specific. This is something that's a little unusual. But it impressed me. I've been running this for 2 years at home. It's literally been running 2 years straight on my desk. Who's heard of an Intel compute stick? Ring bells? Got some hands. Okay. So little Atom CPU thing. The thing literally is I think I bought mine for 120 bucks, $130, 140, depending on Amazon's mood. And you can get a little adapter for it because it's USB 3 that gives you a USB 3 hub and a gigabit Ethernet port. So this little gizmo here, it's small enough, this is it right here running. It's small enough that it can just live in the HDMI port of a monitor. You don't need brackets or anything like that. You just need to plug it in. And with the USB thing, it gives you an adapter. Now, I've got this running. I can show you what it looks like. So bear with me for the spider web here. I had to do a bunch of weirdness to get it back into my computer to put up here. But this is it actually running. It actually, on my home system, I can do 1080p cameras at 8 frames per second, probably easily handle 8 or 10 cameras.
If we were product marketing, we would say they're 4K cameras, but we'll tell you the truth.
400 cameras at 60 frames per minute. Second. But it's an interesting thing I thought I'd bring and show you guys. So if you have a need for a public view monitor, your own candid camera view that you see when you walk in the building, it can also run a smart wall layout. So if you want to have a layout that's up on a facility and have it maybe react to something for a public address thing, or if there's an emergency, have the layout switch to a messaging thing. It's a convenient tool for that. Now, would I want to make this somebody's primary workstation? No. You're not going to want to do playback and really interact with it a lot. But if you just need something simple and inexpensive that can show a lot of or not a lot, but show a reasonable number of cameras and just work, I've had great luck with it. So I thought that might be interesting to show everyone. So who learned something new? Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah. It's good.
That's why we're here. We thought it'd be interesting to kind of bring something new, bring something innovative maybe that you haven't seen before, a feature that you're not familiar with. And that's what we got. Thank you.
So we have time for questions.
Yep. So we do have time for some questions. We have one over here. We're going to do the mic thing.
We'll
Yes.
wait for the mic because I know they want to record these.
Please do wait for the microphones because we are videotaping. Okay, so somebody over here.
Yeah, we got one
Over
up front
here on
here.
my left.
Yeah. Hello.
I think those are hot. Yeah, you can do that too.
All right, go ahead.
With the software management application, will that upgrade professional remote systems as well?
Yes.
Okay.
What wins if a camera is subject to multiple recording rules? How do you know which one's going to win if they don't necessarily agree?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the.
If a camera's sitting in multiple recording rules, that might conflict. What's going to happen? That's a good question.
Recording rules.
I don't know if I could answer that right now, but we could.
Normally, what you do is you take the camera out of the Record on Motion folder and you put it into the Record Always folder for that. So there's no conflict there. If you did do that, I think I've seen it misbehave and I've seen it work. I'm not sure what it would do.
Hi. On the failover load shedding, when you go from the active server to the failover and you diminish the capacity of the camera, is there any warning that it's operating in diminished capacity? And my concern is that somebody could maliciously set that up, kill the server, and nobody be aware of it.
Well, your system monitoring would tell you there's something wrong with your server. And
You want like some sort of indication
but
saying this was set up to do this.
Well, if you don't have it set to fail over, the camera would go dark if your server failed. Because if you have it set to stay on live mode, then you'd continue to see video, and it wouldn't be recording, or you can set it to
that would be my concern, right? So if you're recording and it fails over and you're no longer recording, but you're not aware about it in the control room.
Well, if you had, I don't know.
I know there's no indication in the smart client.
But you would definitely get an alarm from the system monitor, right?
Yeah, I think is like some indication to the users, which in the smart client, the only indication would be that the camera's not there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
In the software management tool you talked about, it could also kind of replace SCCM as far as updating the smart clients. So do you have to put in elevated privileges, as most of the clients may not have, or end users would have elevated rights on those PCs? Or how does it handle that?
You have to run it, if I recall, and Josh, you might know better, but you have to run it with, as a user, basically as a user that is a local admin on all the machines that you want to upgrade. So it'll run as whatever user you've logged into the, and Josh, actually,
There we go.
I'll let Josh clarify this. He can clarify better.
All right, so if I remember right, when you kick off the installation, it's going to install a service on the remote machine where the installation is going to be run. And that service is going to run as the user account that you've specified when you've set up Software Manager. And so you push the installation over to the remote machine, and then the installation is kicked off by the service, which will then monitor the installation and report back to the Software Manager. So yeah, it would be kicked off as a local administrator. That would be a requirement, yeah.
And the one follow-up is that how would it obtain the list of clients, or is that entered in manually?
That, at this time, would be entered in manually. It is stored in XML, so it could be, you could script it if you needed to manually add in that data into XML, and then you'd see it in Software Manager. But yeah, through the UI, it'd be done one at a time.
In the smart client, is there a shortcut for the video diagnostic overlay?
Not currently,
Can we get it?
but that's a good idea.
We're looking at the developers.
Is there a way to map a shortcut key to enable the levels of video diagnostic overlay?
Hey, so I have an alarm question with the alarm tab, and just want to give praise whoever idea it was when you added the playback adjustment time for alarms, the latest 2019 client feature. Just, love it. So when you have an alarm, is there any way to create a custom color on the timeline so they're aware when it's an alarm? It would come in really helpful when you have, heartbeat recording to have a different color for alarms on the timeline.
Currently, I don't believe there's a way to do it on alarms. I know if you can, using the SDK, add different items to that timeline and color code them, but I'm not aware.
For integrations, you can have custom colors. The integration chooses the color that shows up in the timeline. That was one of the things we touched on last year. I don't think you can specify a color.
Not natively, at least.
Okay.
We have the time profiles, but there's no timers. And one of the things that I see with events is sometimes it would be nice to throttle events from sensors. As an example, infrared detectors, when you're moving around in front of them, they just spam the event log. And it's like, okay, there's something waving in front of the event of the infrared sensor. I could probably wait 5 or 10 seconds until you told me about it again. And there's no way to do that. It just sprays the event log with events from that.
So like a debounce feature for
pretty much. Yeah. But it'd be nice if that'd be adjustable, because there were other things that I thought of that would be nice to be able to say, I want to turn this camera off for 20 seconds for some reason, and then automatically have it come back on and go back to active. So it could be used for other things, but it would be nice to have timers in the rules.
Okay, that's good feedback.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, do you know if there's any options that are going to be coming for upgrading the M20s? So we have a client with like 45 M20s out in the field, and we're worried that we aren't going to be able to upgrade them to the most recent level of Milestone because of I think it has to do with my guys told me maybe it's the .NET framework and the Windows updates aren't supported on the M20s. What would you recommend for that client?
There is a new image out, but I don't think it applies to M20. But so in that case, and somebody from here, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that if you really want to continue to use that hardware, you'd probably need to lobotomize it, reinstall Windows, and then just treat it like a computer. At that point, it's just a Milestone branded computer that's running Windows, and put the regular software on it.
Grab me afterwards. I can give you some other ideas.
So we got a few seconds left here. So can I get the pre-sales guys to raise your hand? Anybody on the pre-sales team? So these guys are happy to answer questions too. So if we have, there we go. Come on. Okay.
All right.
So if we have some
more
additional questions, please bounce them off us too.
So you showed in the audit log where you can see when somebody viewed something exported. Is there anywhere in the program where you can see who's viewing stuff live now?
I think you'd see their current activities.
It's under what?
But yeah, if you start a stream, it'll show you that. So you would have that, but it's not going to continue to update the entries over and over again that, yeah, they're still there. But you would have an entry that they started a stream and they're interacting with it.
Oh, because it'll show they're connected.
Yeah, it would still initiate the streams. Yep. Okay, I think that's it for time. So again, we've got the pre-sales guys, so if you have any additional questions, please let us know. Thank you.